Good morning. This morning we're going to talk about, oh, there I am. Ha! This morning we're going to talk about helping behavior, okay? We're going to break this up into three different things: why we help, when we'll help, and who will help, all right? So kind of break it into those parts. So we'll start with perhaps a good story here. It was Washington, D.C., 1982, a plane crashes in the icy water. So a helicopter comes to pick people up. They're dropping the rope, but the survivors are in shock. So there's one older man, balding older man. He's alert. He grabs a rope. He puts it in people's hands. He doesn't, he does this over and over and over. The helicopter's taking people out, coming back and forth and back and forth. And by the time, they come back for the balding guy, he's dead. Right? He froze to death. Wow. Okay. Or we then see the opposite here, which is, of course, the old classic Kitty Genovese problem. And so Kitty Genovese was, as you probably know, a manager of a bar in Queens, New York, 1964. She's coming home somewhere around 3 o'clock in the morning. She has to park her car about 2.5, 3 blocks away from her apartment. And so she's coming to her apartment. She starts to get attacked by a knife-wielding rapist, and she starts screaming, "Oh my God, help me," etc. And so what happens is some people opens the window, "Leave her alone," something like this. Guy runs off. Kitty Genovese gets up. Guy comes back. All right. So the guy left twice, or came 3 times, 3 separate times. He's attacking and kills her eventually. Now, 37 people, heard something, knew something, all right? But they all saw lights in other people's apartments, and it was a 35-minute attack. And I mean, it's almost become urban legend about this. Yeah, it's disputed about exactly who saw what, okay? And all of a sudden, what happened was the first person to call the police was after she was already dead, okay? So one of these is a good, positive story, and one is not. So what's the difference? Why did the balding guy give his life, and then why did, in Kitty Genovese's case, people didn't even bother to call the police? I mean, is it because it's Queens, New York, and wait, this first one's D.C. I guess people in D.C. are awesome, and New York are could be. I don't know. Never lived in D.C., but the New Yorkers are pretty selfish. So let's talk about a couple of terms here. Altruism. Altruism is a beautiful idea. It's a desire to increase the welfare of another with absolutely no regard for your own self. Now, altruism is a very troublesome idea in the face of basic evolutionary theory, because anything that diminishes from your ability to survive and reproduce should be selected against by basic evolutionary selective pressures. And so what happens is that some more recent understanding of altruism looks at, for example, vervet monkeys. And in vervet monkeys, what happens is that they're fairly fascinating. They've got 3 different alarm calls. If they see a snake coming, they go, "Oh, oh, oh," right? And all the monkeys go up the tree. And if they see a leopard coming, they make a different sound. And if they see an eagle coming, they sing, a different sound. So, of course, if an eagle's coming, then the appropriate behaviors get out of the tree, right? You don't want to be there. And so what happens is that by making this alarm call, that monkey has in fact put a giant target on its head saying, "Ooh, ooh, ooh, I'm right here, come and eat me," So how could this behavior, which literally isn't just altruism, but I mean it's the opposite, because it's in just taking away from your life. But the key to understanding this is that all behaviors are programmed at some genetic level. And what happens is that the monkeys that this guy going, "Woo, woo, woo," he saves is his brother, his cousin. It's not going to be random dudes. It's going to be other monkeys that he or she, because I bet you they both do it, other monkeys that have a lot of genetic relatedness. And genetic relatedness, in other words, whatever was the genetic material that coded for this alarm calling behavior would be shared by the other monkeys that were more likely to survive as a result. Yeah? Very cool. Come on, there you go. So, what are the notions of altruism, or help us to explain it? That social exchange theory, and it's kind of an interesting idea. Human interactions are transactions that aim to maximize rewards, minimize costs. It's a, it's a balance or something like this. And so egoism is this motive that I believe, I mean, I'm sorry, get me, don't get mad at me. I'm just going to give you my opinion. I believe that all human beings are ultimately selfish. Whenever they enter into any, whether they all admit it or not, all human beings are transactional, which is I love that term. It really became commonplace when, Donald Trump was elected president because of the transactional nature in which he interacts with other people. But I would argue that this transactional nature that Donald Trump exhibits quite blatantly isn't terribly different from the way everybody thinks deep down. That is to say, when we enter into any kind of a relationship of sorts, including Mother Teresa, she's sitting there and she sees the poor in the streets. And so she's thinking to herself, what are the costs? What are the benefits of exhibiting helping behavior? Okay, and so what's going to happen is that we think she's a saint because when she does a cost benefit analysis, she considers benefits in terms of, will I feel good about myself? Will God be happy with me? Okay, and so she has some kind of internal motives, whereas somebody like Donald Trump, in his transactional nature, perhaps has much more exterior motives, like how much money will this make me? Okay, so in one case we call her a saint, in the other case we call him, I'm not going there. You almost got me to say it. All right. But you get the idea that they're both, in my opinion, ultimately transactional in nature. That is, I will not perform a behavior if I do not believe the rewards that I'll receive from it will outweigh the costs to exhibit it. Yeah, clearly, rewards, right? People volunteer to pad their resume. They don't volunteer to be altruistic, right? They're just like, I'm going to get something out of it. A lot of people volunteer so that other people will see them volunteering and they'll get social approval. Social approval is a reward. So it's, again, going on the notion that humans are ultimately selfish creatures. And even if you can't find an external reward, okay, like this, you might be able to find internal rewards, like I just described with Mother Teresa. That, if I don't help, I'll feel guilty, which is a bad feeling. Sounds like negative reinforcement to me, right? So I will exhibit the helping behavior in order to eliminate the guilty feeling. Yeah, there's your negative reinforcement. So it's an interesting idea. And so here is this really kind of a cool, very powerful finding in social psychology. Some would say the most powerful finding of all, the feel-good, do-good phenomenon. That this phenomenon, or that people that are in a good mood are more helpful, has been found in such a wide variety of situations. That is, it doesn't particularly matter why somebody's in a good mood, and it doesn't particularly matter how you define helpfulness. So in this little example right here, they were given a free sample, and so that was their manipulation of putting people in a good mood. And then the helpfulness that they were measuring was, will they relay a phone message? Okay? And so you see what happens is in the first couple of minutes after receiving a free sample, they are far, far, far more likely to relay a phone message or help. And that effect does wear off across the 20-minute time block. So people that are in a good mood are more likely to be helpful. Okay. But sometimes we help simply because it's expected of us, right? It's just an expectation. Obviously, the reciprocity norm. If somebody's already helped you, and then it's time for you to help them, and you don't help, you're kind of a son of a bitch, right? You need to do this stuff, okay? Or the social responsibility norm. We as citizens of the United States have at least some obligation, social response. I'm not going to say obligation, right? Because I don't want anybody to call me a socialist or something. But we have some kind of a responsibility. call it I call it a fundamental moral responsibility just because you're human, right? But it's an expectation, a responsibility that you will help those people in need. I mean, after Hurricane Katrina, we saw things going on that were just unbelievably unheard of. People were just opening their door to random strangers and letting them, stay with them. And it's pretty amazing that kind of thing might happen. As a rule, when it comes to these social norms, females tend to be more helpful than males. All right, females tend to help. That is to say, okay, wait a minute. I think females tend to cut and paste and scratch everything because I had just bit my tongue. All right, females tend to help males and females equally. Males offer more help to females than to males. All right. And I mean, that's pretty straightforward because we're going to talk about the costs of helping. And if a male goes to help another male, there is some costs involved as the embarrassment by the male that is being helped turns into a backlash. How dare you think I need help? All right. Females tend to seek help more often, right? My wife, oh my God, she just can't. She has to stop for asking for. I've got the GPS. I know where I am. I know exactly, and she still insists we stop. All right, we go to the store, and she asks these clerks, like, you're at Walmart, and she's trying to ask them questions about a computer or something. Like, they don't know, but she has to ask for help. All right, shh, don't tell me that. And generally, that's what I was trying to say at the beginning, and then my tongue got all tied up. Generally, females are more helpful. They tend to offer more help, more spontaneous help too, by the way. So when we give help, there are potential costs, right? I mean, we can understand some of these. And as we said with social exchange theory, I'm going to look at costs and benefits. So there is cost. One of these that angers me so immensely, you click this link here in the PowerPoint. This story, I just fume when I hear this story. Some stupid ass parents, they're at some baseball game or something, and they're just not watching their 2-year old or 3-year old or something. And the kid's wandering off out in the parking lot somewhere. So a guy kind of tries to, hey, little girl, let's go figure this out, right? And so he brings her over and finds it. Then the parents just start beating the living shit out of the guy, and they're just like, you're trying to, kidnap my child. And it's like, it was so bad. It was even after this event happened, even after he got the crap beaten out of him. Then the parents, they're like wanted him arrested, and the police looked it up and was like, look, the guy, it's documented. He's here with his family. All right, he's attending this baseball game with his family. It's not like he's a predator sneaking into the parking lot. He was like, yeah. He's here with his family. Are you kidding me? And the parents were still so, and they went on social media. The guy had to move out of his own town because they just insisted that he was trying to kidnap and do things to the child. And it was like, no, you're just a shitty parent. Oh, you got me on a rant because that just angers me to no end. Oh. So watch the link and see if it upsets you too. However, helping people also takes a lot of time, right? I mean, I'm a busy guy. If I'm driving and somebody's by the side of the road and they're changing a tire, and I'm like, I don't know, it's either time or effort, right? Both of these are involved in such a thing. But this last one is actually a little bit strange. I remember one time it was picking my daughter up from kindergarten, and all the other mothers, since I'm the only male out there. But anyway, there's a baby in the stroller. Kid's maybe 1.5, something. And one of the really flimsy strollers. And so this baby starts leaning forward, leaning and leaning and leaning. It was like you could almost just see the tumble coming, right? I'm just like diving over, catch this child from smashing into the concrete. And then guess what? The baby stopped. They had a seatbelt on and didn't tumble. And I looked like such an idiot trying to help somebody that didn't need help. Oh my gosh. Oy. I don't know. Maybe I'll get rewarded in the afterlife for that. But all right. So here we go. I'm not sure why I have it here after I already talked about it. But with the vervet monkey idea, is that evolution has selected for altruism towards one's close relatives because of the shared genetic material between them. All right, and there's an in-group bias for helping. We tend to donate money to people that we know or people that we see far more than we would donate to random strangers. Yeah. So in fact, yeah, there you go. Altruistic acts are even can be seen as selfish because you're protecting your genetic material, right? If you're doing a behavior that protects, that allows your brother to survive, then you've protected your genetics. So it's something like that. But at the same time, altruism among not just relatives but close others can be quite beneficial to the self, like a coalition where you give of yourself to help others, but by doing so the whole group becomes better. So it's related to social cooperation, which I'll get to in a while here. But when it comes to non-relatives, the game gets a little bit more tricky because again, this whole altruism idea just flies in the face of basic evolutionary theory, right? I mean, we select, it's evolution selects for people that can survive, people that have more resources, etc. However, if we use reciprocal altruism, so here we've got a group of chimpanzees and they take turns. First, I'll pick the nits off of you, then you pick the nits off of me, right? Or reciprocal altruism. Today I catch a deer and I have some leftover extra deer. I give you some of my deer meat. Tomorrow, if you catch a deer, you have some left over, you give it back. All right, and this is reciprocal. I give some, you give some. We find that altruism becomes particularly complicated in strange situations like tipping behavior. Now, if you go to the same restaurant over and over and over, tipping makes sense, okay? Because you're gonna generously give some money, and therefore the server is going to remember you and give you better service in return, right? Lovely. But what if you're at a restaurant you've never been to, you're on vacation or something, right? You're never going to see this person again. You've already been given service, whether it be good or bad service, so it's not like you're going to get anything back in return. So why do we tip? Right? It obviously the social norms is a big part of it, but still it's a little bit difficult to understand. And related to this is empathy. Empathy is this experience of putting yourself in another's shoes. I've actually heard that there's two forms of empathy: cognitive empathy and emotional empathy. But clearly, empathy is necessary in order for helping behaviors to be exhibited in any way, shape, or form. But the two forms of empathy, and this is a fascinating thing. In fact, I heard a whole story about the word empathy on the radio, on NPR, of course, right? A whole story about empathy on NPR, and it was just fascinating that the word empathy didn't even exist in the English language until after World War II, right? It's just really, yeah, sure. We borrowed it from another language, brought it in, made our own stuff with it. It was a cool idea, a cool thought. But anyway, the two forms of empathy are cognitive empathy. And so cognitive empathy is the ability to understand somebody else's perspective or their point of view. Cognitive empathy clearly requires the mirror neuron system, clearly requires the theory of mind, things of this nature. But the second form of empathy is emotional empathy. And that is, do I care about your feelings and thoughts? So, cognitive empathy is, can I understand your perspective, your feelings, what you're going through? Emotional empathy, do I care? And so clearly, if somebody is high in cognitive empathy but very, very low in emotional empathy, you got a psychopath on your hands, right? So anyway, this is cool stuff. I'll take a pause here and we'll pick it up in a couple more minutes.